Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today, we're kicking off season 5 with Eek video. Yes, I'm gonna attempt to do video podcasting. I don't know if I'm gonna stick with it or not, but there are all these things everybody in the podcasting world says you have to do. And my response to everything is I don't have to do anything. But I've decided I want to have some different content for my YouTube channel because I have this podcast on YouTube, if you did not know that already. And it's just a static image of the show logo and then the audio that I record. So I'm going to try this. I don't know if I'm going to stick with it or not, but hey, for one video, I apologize, you'll have to look at my face. So we're gonna have a great time today. I think, doesn't matter. But you can also see what a mess I am when I record these. Yes, I'm still gonna heavily edit because I get to be a bit of a mess sometimes. A lot of ums and uhs and a whole lot of awkward pauses while I sit and think, where on earth was I going with that? And then I have to go back and look at my notes and start all of it, and it's a big mess. So, all right. But before we get into starting season 5, you know what I'm going to say next. I have a Patreon. We all have Patreons, don't we? I have a Patreon. And if you go to patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula, you can support me there. And all of the funds that I receive from my Patreon goes to a separate fund so that I can provide pro bono care to those who cannot afford my services. For the last couple of months, I've been doing a little check-in with my Patreons and telling them exactly what I have been providing out in the community pro bono so that they understand and they know what they're paying for. So if you would like to help me in supporting other people who might be able to need my services, that would be amazing. I would love that. I also have been, my whole frame of mind this year has been changing. I've been upheaving a lot of things, and I've been changing how I do stuff with my business, with my life, with everything. And I have all these amazing ideas for this podcast. I told you I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. But I've been having some ideas with that, but with those ideas might come some costs, so I might need a way to offset that if I want to go through with them. I don't know. That's not why you're here today, though. You are here for this podcast episode, I hope. I'm assuming that's why you're here. If not, hi, I'm Nikki. Anyway, so today I wanted to kick off season 5 with a nice solo episode, just how I started this whole thing, just me talking at my microphone and now talking at my camera and talking about different types of things around grief, death, and dying. Because the more we have these conversations, the less stigmatized they are. And the easier it is when we have to face these things. So I know the subject of my podcast is grief, but I also talk about my work as a death doula and end-of-life work and things of that nature as well. So I thought today, to kick off season 5, I would do something a little different and talk about myths about death doulas. So these are things that I have heard or things that I have read that are the common myths that are out there all about death doulas and what we do. And I'm going to bust those myths for you today. So let's just dive right in, shall we? Okay. So myth number 1, death doulas are only for the actively dying. That's not true. And I think for a lot of these myths, people that have been listening to this episode for a while, folks that have been listening to my podcast for a while will already know that these things are not true and why, because I talk about this stuff a lot. Or if you are a death doula, know death doulas, you probably already know this. But no, death doulas are not for the actively dying. I give presentations all the time about what we do, and I always say, death doulas can work with anybody at any time. I have worked with people who are my age and even younger who just want to get their advance directive paperwork together, but don't quite understand what they need and when and why. And yeah, you could pay thousands of dollars and go talk to an attorney and they'll do all that paperwork for you. And that's fine and dandy. But you can also download those forms for free on the internet. Most people don't know that. But with that, there are ways to make them legally binding, having them notarized, witness signatures, and then the bigger question is, great, I got my advance directives. What do I do with them now? Because if they're sitting in a drawer somewhere and nobody knows where they are, they're not going to do you any good. So those are all things I have knowledge on, so I can help discuss that. I can help you decide what you need, when, where, and what to do with that paperwork. So there you go. And with that, I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of like public speaking and education type things. I did a lunch and learn for a therapy group last month, and that was fun. It was just educating people on who we are and what we do. But as far as like actual client work, I've mentioned multiple times, I'm a grief coach as well. And that kind of ties in with my death doula work. I work with the families after the fact, or even during dying and before, and all of that with their grief, to help them navigate what they're feeling, their emotions, and all the chaotic and maybe icky things they're in. So there's so much I can do. Legacy projects, emotional support, caregiver respite, like the list goes on and on and on. There is just sitting by somebody's bedside while they're actively dying and maintaining a presence and maintaining, whatever it is they're looking for, reading to them, maintaining their space and keeping it the way they want. That's just like a 0.5% of everything that death doulas do. We do so much more than that. So, okay, let's move on. I can talk all day about any of these. You know that. I'm so passionate about what I do. Death doulas replace hospice. Absolutely not. That is not true. And whenever I introduce myself and what I do, if I'm doing my quick little 30-second elevator pitch, as it were, the first thing out of my mouth is I provide non-medical and holistic support. So right there, non-medical. And hospice does provide non-medical care too. They have social workers and support aides and chaplains, things like that, and volunteers. But I do not, so it's not just the medical care, but I don't do what hospice does. Hospice is a fantastic, huge, robust program that everybody who's eligible should take advantage of. You know that by now because I harp on that a whole lot. So no, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a nurse. So I'm definitely not going to replace any medical care, nor am I going to replace hospice. That's every individual will have a team of 3 to 8 people that might come into their home or into their, place of living during their end of life phase. I'm not 8 people. I'm just one. So no, I don't replace hospice or medical care. In fact, I wouldn't even try to. And I work in tandem with them. I love what hospice does. Most of them seem to appreciate what I do. So there you go. All right. Myth number 3. Death doulas are just for the dying person. Absolutely not. Yes, I work with the dying person. Of course I do. But I work with the family as a whole. I work with the whole, and I use the word family loosely. I usually use the term loved ones or care circles. I work with everybody in the vicinity, whoever their caregivers are, whoever their families are, whoever their pets. There's a whole lot that goes into death and dying and the circles within of your families, friends, whatever. And I just said I do the grief work too. So I'm there with them. And the legacy work I do. I love sitting down with families together to help them start thinking about legacy projects or anything that the dying person might want to leave behind for them, because what beautiful conversations come from that. I have just witnessed some of the most beautiful moments of families coming together and sharing all of these stories, and just, I love it. So no, I don't work with just the dying person. And one of the many services I talk about is liaison for visitors. So when people are coming in to visit, if the dying person doesn't want specific people there, or doesn't want a lot of people there, or is okay, or if they just want a certain tone in the room that they're in, part of my job is to help facilitate that, make sure that continues to happen. So I'm working with the guests to say, hey, when you come in the room, please take your shoes off, announce who you are, don't touch them, do touch them. Here's their favorite lotion. Feel free to hug them, climb in bed, whatever it is. I'm there to kind of help guide their guests in that. And if certain things are going on with the end of life, like I don't want to give specific examples, but icky things can happen at the end of life. So giving somebody a simple, gentle heads up of, hey, this is going on, or if they're actively dying and they've got the death rattle, like their breathing might be a little jarring, here's what to expect, just so they don't walk in and, get real scared, because dying is not like the movies. And if something is going on that might be upsetting, I want to give them a heads up for that. So, oh yeah, there you go. Myth number 4, I'm looking at my list over here. Death doulas are morbid or depressing. Okay, so any one of my listeners right here, am I morbid or depressing to any one of you? I'm gonna venture to guess no. No, I don't think I'm morbid and okay, yeah, I can be a little morbid. Okay, I'm a little morbid about some things, but what I do and what we do as death doulas is it's so far from morbid and weird. It's not. The only reason we make it morbid or weird is because, again, death is stigmatized in our culture. We don't talk about it. It's a weird thing that's over there that other people handle. So if you really think about it, death is completely natural. I've talked about it many times on here, how we, for millennia, cared for our dying in our own homes. We had mom and dad in the home with us, grandma, grandpa, cousins, uncles, whatever. They were dying in our homes. We were around it all the time. That's just what you did. So that's just part of life. So that's not morbid or weird at all. And as for depressing, I was just sharing what beautiful moments I've shared with some of my clients. No, it's not depressing. Is it sad sometimes? Absolutely. Do I get sad sometimes? Absolutely. I'm a human being and I love my clients. And I miss them when they die, and I'm sad when they die. But it's so beautiful and fulfilling. And when I can sit back and reflect on somebody I've worked with and just acknowledge that they had a better dying experience because I was able to help guide them through it, is the least depressing thing I can think of. It's beautiful. It's an honor. I'm always honored, and it's just beautiful for me to be in that sacred space. And I'm always touched that people allow that. So no, it's not depressing. Okay. Myth number 5, death doulas only work with the elderly. Nope. It is not just the elderly who die. In fact, I have worked with clients as young as in their 50s, and I know plenty of death doulas who work with children. Children die too. It's awful, but it's true. I've worked with people as a grief coach younger than me, all ages. No, we don't just work with the elderly. We do work with the elderly, but not just the elderly. And all but a couple of my clients have had a terminal illness. So their age was kind of irrelevant at that, because it was their illness that was what ended their life eventually. But they were in all varying ages. So no, we don't just work with the elderly. In fact, I feel it's even more important for us to work with people who are younger. Not saying that death is easier as you're older, but if you are a couple, if it's a husband-wife duo that are in their 80s, they may have witnessed some other people around them dying. If it's a child who's hiring me for their mom, maybe their father's already died. It's possible that they have been around death and dying before. If you're a young couple in your 40s and one of you has a terminal illness and only has a couple years left to live, this is an area that you never thought you would be in. So I feel like it's even more critical to have somebody to walk with you through this process if you are much younger, if that makes sense. So no, we don't just work with the elderly. Okay, myth number 6. You have to be religious or spiritual to work with a death doula. Again, absolutely not. Nope. I've had clients of all different backgrounds, all different faiths. Christian, Jewish, atheist, Buddhist, you name it. I've worked with somebody in almost any realm. And with that, I hear a lot of death doulas are kind of woo-woo, and they're going to come in with their sage stick, running around the room and chant and sing weird. No, that is so not what we do. it can be. If that's what you want, then absolutely we can do that. But no, we're not the woo-woos. We can be, again, but I've worked with people, like I said, of all different faiths and backgrounds. I'm only there to companion you through end of life and your family, your loved ones. And if that includes some religious and spiritual rites, I'm on it. Tell me what to do and when to do it. If that includes none of that, great, I'm on it. Just tell me what to do and when to do it. I am there regardless of your background, regardless of your spirituality. None of that matters to me. And if you're one of those people that, finds a different way of thinking at the end of life and you want a little help with that, great. I know people in every spiritual background. I'll go get somebody for you. Happy to do that. Because again, that's what I do. So no, we're not just the woo-woos. We're not going to come in with the sage sticks unless that's what you want. I did have a drum circle once. It was requested of me. Okay, just a couple more. This one. I love this. Death doula is a new thing, new trend. No. Death doulas have been around for millennia. And they may not have been called that. And they may have been, they could be death midwives. It could be death walkers. There have been folks in the Native American traditions and Inuit backgrounds that are death walkers. And they are the people that help companion people to the next world. So no, gosh, no, we are so not new. We've been around forever. We may just have been called something different. The current death doula model was started in, I believe, the early 2000s. And they called it that because they started basing the trainings on it around birthing doulas. Because, as I've mentioned many times before, dying is a labor much like birthing is. And there's a lot of similarities in birth versus dying. So, no, we've been around forever in many different forms. And the word doula itself is an ancient Greek word meaning female servant. So, and that's not to say death doulas or doulas are always female. I know a couple male death doulas. So, there you go. We're not a new trend. We've been around for a very, very long time. And lastly, but bestly, death doulas only focus on death. No, again, none of, obviously these are all myths. That's so not true. Part of what I tell people about myself and what I do is that I want to help people understand and embrace their mortality so that they can have a more fulfilled life while they still have it, no matter how much time you have left. And this is for, even if I'm just educating people or talking about what I do, and people who are young and healthy have no sign of death anywhere in their near future, good for you. But as long as we all understand our mortality, it helps us live a more full life, right? Because that's what gives our lives meaning, is the fact that it's so short. So no, I'm focused on life and continuing on your legacy after you are gone. How can I help your spirit and your soul continue to live even if you are no longer here? I also, again, do so much grief work. I do so much work with people who are grieving. And that, in and of itself, it might have to do with death. It might have to do with just some other loss. I've worked with people who lost jobs, people who have lost relationships. Grief is many things. It's loss. It's our response to loss. So it's not all about death. So there you go. So yeah, there you go. All these there's probably more out there. If you've heard a myth, share it with me. I'd be interested to know and then debunk it for you. Just call me the Mythbusters of death doula work. I'm not as cool as those guys. All right. Well, since we are at the end of the episode, then you know what time it is. And since I now have video here for those of you watching, you can actually watch me pull a card at random from, here it is, the death deck. And this is exactly how I do it. So you see why I always end up dropping one. And of course, this time I won't drop one probably. The deck is huge. This is only like a third or like 2/3 of it. There's more. It's hard to shuffle the whole thing. So, all right. I'll pull one at random. We have, I know I've done this one on the show before. I know I have, but I'm going to read it again. If you knew you could visit your loved ones after death, how would you make your presence known? the last time I answered this. Okay. I want to know your answer to the death deck question. All right. No, I can't cop out. I have to answer this. The last time I made a joke, and I think I said I would make my presence known with a very loud belch. That, for those of you who don't know me, is one of my talents. It's disgusting, but I can belch very loudly. And those who know me would be like, oh, hey, Nikki's here. Because that's just what I do. I can't think of something a little better. Like, honestly, if I could just, a more serious answer with that, if I could find a way to break through the veil to provide comfort for anybody who's really grieving me hard. If somebody who is left behind after I'm gone is just really devastated by the loss, if I could just somehow comfort them, because that's kind of who I am, and what I do is provide comfort for people. So if I can just come back and make them feel better, or at least show them that I'm okay and that they're okay, and it's okay to not be okay, that everything they're feeling is valid. So there you go. That's my answer. I would love to hear your answer to the death deck. You probably all know how to reach out to me by now, but if you're new here, great. My website is nikkithedeathdoula.com. It's spelled Nikki. Please reach out to me if you want to tell me your answer to the death deck question, if you want to be a guest on my show, if you have a story to share, if you have thoughts about anything I said today, if you have myths or other things you'd like me to bust, just please feel free to reach out to me through my website. I don't really do the socials much anymore. I still have social media pages. I check them occasionally. But if you're Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, it's all at Nikki the Death Doula. I very rarely post stuff out there anymore. I may again. That's one of those things that I might do in the future with this podcast again. I don't know. I'm not feeling it right now. But hey, there I am. NikkiTheDeathDoula.com. But more importantly, if you really enjoyed this episode, or if you enjoy any of my episodes, the best thing you can do is tell somebody about my show. Share it with a friend. The second best thing you can do is leave a rating or a review, especially on Apple. I don't know why that's how this works, guys, but that's just how it works. Apple appears to be the god of podcasting because that's where it started. I don't know. But if you leave me a 5-star review or a 5-star rating and leave just a couple sentences of a review, even one sentence, just some words there as to why you gave me a 5-star review, it really helps my show pop up more for people to find it. So do that. That'd be lovely. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay too. I don't care. I'm just happy to be here. I'm always happy to share my thoughts and do this podcast. So there you go. All right, guys. This has been weird because I'm looking at the camera, I can see myself, and I don't know. We'll see if I continue doing this, but that is all for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in and humoring me as I try new things all the time and giggle like a little weirdo through a lot of these episodes. If that's offensive to you, I offended somebody with that once, so I'm really sorry. I giggle. That's just how I roll sometimes. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you have an amazing week. And remember, as always, your grief is yours. Your feelings are valid. Grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula is produced by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC in Columbus, Ohio. Nikki the Death Doula LLC is for consulting, education, emotional support, and guidance, and is no way considered a funeral establishment or licensed mental health establishment. Scripts, editing, sound design, literally everything with this podcast is done solely by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC, with the exception of the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. Licensing information can be found at filmmusic.io.